Welcome to another video. Today I am going to talk about business. And as I was thinking about this, the content for this video, I was trying to ask myself, a few questions. And one of the biggest questions that I was asking myself is, why do people get into businesses? Why would somebody quit employment and go into business? Okay, employment has its benefits and it has its drawbacks, and so does a business. But now, I know that most people would want to get into business to solve the problems or the drawbacks that employment offers. But then, at the end of the day, it is about getting the money, the money that we need to use for our sustenance and for our development. And money can come from employment. And employment simply means that you are giving your skills, your time, and your knowledge in exchange for money at a stipulated time, either monthly or weekly. We are used to the monthly regime, and with employment, you have that fixed schedule whereby you report to work at a certain time and you leave at a certain time. Your boss will demand that you meet expectations and even you exceed expectations. You will work with the limits, you will work with the numbers, you will have bosses to overlook what you do, you'll have people to correct what you do, and at the end of the day, by the time you're getting your money, with most people, the money goes into, um, meeting recurrent expenses, that is expenses for rent, expenses for food, consumables like water, electricity, and then most people are servicing loans, and then you at the end of the day one is left with very little to do what I can call a personal development with, or even like that family development with. For example, there are many people who will desire to up their skills or get more education, but one of the things that are limiting them from doing so is the amount of money that they will need to spend. So these are some of the drawbacks that employment creates, that most people go into businesses to solve. But unfortunately, most people go into businesses blindly and they end up into situations that are even worse than they would have been should they have stuck to employment. So one of the benefits of employment is that it offers instant reward. At the end of that stipulated time, you'll have your money as agreed. Okay, so it is easy for one to rise through the ranks in life, just to start up, put up the basics that you need, get a house, get the things that you need. And it is also relevant for the purposes of gaining experience, and trying to sample what the market has, and just trying to build up yourself as an individual, build up of your skills, communication, money handling, and all those things, things like multitasking, and how much you can perform in a rigid atmosphere, and how well you can also do in an atmosphere when under pressure. So there are those useful things that one needs to pick from employment, and I don't dispute that. But then the purposes of going into business for most people is usually to raise more money. Either you need to raise more money with the same effort that you put into employment, or raise the same amount of money that you are raising in employment with lesser effort. So if you target to raise, the almost like the same amount of money that you did while in employment, then it comes with less effort, with less complexity, with less levels that like that you need to go through, with less accountability. But then it frees up time for you to be able to do other things, even time for your own family. So I was looking at the basics of businesses that we have, and the frameworks of businesses that we have in our country, and I realized some things that I felt are important for me to mention. Now, most businesses are run by families. most business are usually a family setup. And this setup has its own drawbacks. It also has its own strengths. But I will look at what can happen in a business whereby you have a couple running into it. I have been employed in several places whereby the business is run by a couple, a husband and a wife, and the husband has his own role to play, the wife has his own role to play. But I have just come to realize that it comes with several challenges, and these are the challenges that I want to list. It's very easy for one to go into business, as a single person. You can choose either to go into it yourself, you are married, but you do not want to involve your spouse into the business. So you raise the money yourself, you raise the stock yourself, the idea is yours. It's you who has the projection of how you want the business to grow, and you choose not to involve your spouse. Again, there is this person who is not married, does not have a long-term relationship with anyone, has chosen the single life and gets into business, so that the business idea is, the individual is the one that carries the business idea, carries the vision, and sets up everything in terms of putting up the business, so that it is just a sole proprietorship. And then there is now the other aspect where you might not choose to involve your family, but you might choose to involve somebody external. Either you do a partnership, or you do, with several people, so that you have like a company. But I will talk about the framework that is very common in our country, which is businesses being run by couples. We have seen, and heard stories online about businesses being run by couples, and when the couples develop differences, it becomes evident, even in their businesses. Even it affects the operations, it affects the client flow, it affects the money flow in and out. And this is one of the things that I would say kills businesses in our country. For example, we all know that couples do have their differences. We do not have a couple that is 100% in tandem with each other, that they are 100% in agreement. There will be differences here and there. The secret is to know how to solve those differences. But then these differences will also manifest in the businesses, because there are no two businesses that run on the same platform, that run on the same network, that run on the same set of operations. So these differences will also be evident in the workplace or in the business. And when these differences are displayed to the workers and they are displayed to the clients, it fuels the stories going round and round, because honestly, we will know the couples, we will know the couples who have differences in their marriage based on the establishment or based on their businesses. We will not just know it as individuals, because individuals don't exist. Their presence is hardly known. But the presence of individuals who run businesses, who run farms, who run enterprises, it's very key and very public. So when these personal differences crop up, they will become public, and it will affect so many things in the business, and the chances of these businesses dying, it's very high. We also have another example of businesses that die, whereby the vision was with the individual, and when the individual passes on and the spouse comes up and takes up the operations of the business dies. Or even the other example is whereby the parents had the idea of the business, and they passed on and left the business to the children. They developed their own differences, and businesses ultimately die. So the owner of the business is the person who houses the business idea. He is the creator. He is the one who has the vision. He is the one who knows the projection of the business. And any other person coming into the business, for example, if you need to involve your spouse, then the realm of management and decision making should be left to the owner of the business idea. And this is the same thing that I see happening in churches as well. So the realm of management and the decision making should be left to the owner of the business. And if the spouse really needs to come into the business, then they should be coming from a supporting perspective, to support the idea, to support the growth. And if they will not feel comfortable in that position, then they will just be, as they can just wait, for the proceeds and for the money from home, or they can, I dare say, they can just involve themselves with other activities outside the business. Okay, so that is the framework that I see most businesses in Kenya operating from. But now, the basics of a business are, I can, divide them into three aspects, which I will call it the triad of a business. The triad starts with the owner, then goes to the need that the owner needs to satisfy, and then goes to the capacity of the ones in need to pay, and then now the final bit, which is identifying the resources. So I divided it into this triad consisting of three things, which is the owner, and then there is the need plus the capacity of the people need to pay, and the last one is the resources that are needed. And I will give this as an example. For example, let's say a mat is headed from destination A through destination B, through B, and a matatu, a passenger service vehicle, has left place A, headed to destination C, but it will pass through B. On the way, we can look at it with an example, like, for example, a public service vehicle coming from town, it is headed to Kiambu through the Ndegwa. Okay? But then, as these guys are, it is the morning shift and everyone is heading to town, and these guys are coming from town to go and pick passengers, to bring to town. And as they are coming from town, basically the matatu has no occupants. But when they reach place B, which is now the Ndegwa, they realize that there is a crowd of people, in the opposite side of the road, waiting to be taken to town, and there is no vehicle inside to carry them. So they decide, instead of going all the way to Kiambu, let us make a quick U-turn, pick these passengers, and take them to town. Now, what have these people seen, and what have they done at that precise moment of making that U-turn and making that decision? Number one, they have realized a need. And the need are the passengers who need to be ferried to town. And they know that they have the capacity to pay, because they always pay their fares every morning. And number two, they have the resources that they need, which is a matatu full of seats and it is empty. And number three, they themselves, will call them the owners, and they are, they have the necessary documents, they have the necessary experience, they know the route so well, they know the hard obstacles that they are going to experience along the route, and they basically know how to overcome or how to come over them. So this is the same scenario that a business runs on. Number one, there is the owner, and the owner needs to ask themselves one question: why business and not employment or not any other source of income? Why do I need to go into a business? Apart from those two things that we mentioned, money and time, there are very many other reasons as to why somebody will decide to go into business. For example, as I was coming to work this morning, and I work in my own establishment, there were many people on the road who are rushing to their places of work. And I know most of them were rushing towards places where they are employed. But then I was telling myself this thing, that as these people are rushing to work to meet their obligations and to be on time and to secure their salary, I am rushing to building an empire. I am rushing and I'm running towards building an empire, towards building an establishment, towards building, something that is going to run for years and years to come. Something that is going to benefit my children's children. It is not just something that will end or will be terminated by a piece of paper in form of either a resignation letter or a letter of one being fired. So the idea now becomes bigger than just money and time. The idea becomes, I am putting up an establishment. I am putting up an empire. I am putting up a place where, apart from taking the money out of it, it is a place that I am going to put resources into. It is a place that I am going to watch as it makes an upward trajectory. That a place where I am going to see, the efforts and the time and the sacrifice that has been put into it, bringing forth fruits. So it is, I would just call it an empire because it is something that I am running towards establishing, and putting together and putting resources into it and watching it as it is growing. So the owner of the business needs to have a clear idea as to why he or she is going into business. If the idea is going into business to look for money, then that can be a wrong move. For example, it is only in business where people lose money. It is also in business where people get money. There are not many people who will say that they get conned 100 to 100,000 shillings. That that money just gets stolen. But somebody looks for money to put up a business, 200,000 shillings, 300,000 shillings. Pays the rent, buys stock, buys the necessary equipment that they need. Hires personnel if it reaches to that period, and then 3-4 months down the line, that person does not have the money, and there is no business and there is no stock. It is only in business where people lose money. Okay? And it gets worse if this money has been taken from a loan. So the person ends up servicing a loan with nothing to show for. I have been a victim of that situation. And one of the mistakes that I did during that period was that I underestimated the amount of money that we as a family consume, over time. And it just came as a shock to me that we actually consumed more than what I thought. So I ended up consuming, the stock, and I had nothing to return back to the business. So after 3 months, I actually had no money, I had no stock, and I had a loan to service. I ended up servicing the loan for 10 more months, and I ended up paying for something that I had no tangible evidence of. And I believe that's what most people do in business. The owner is the critical component in this triad. There are so many aspects to the owner that I feel will require a separate video to try and piece together and actually break down first into fragments, then try to piece together. But among the reasons that make businesses fail is that the owner either is not well versed into the area that the person is going into. Mistakes like taking a loan to start a business, underestimating your own consumption, your own family consumption, the resilience, the inner self of the person, the tolerance for resilience. And I always say that it takes a madman to open up a shop or to open up an establishment today, knowing very well that you opened up yesterday, got everything in order, cleaned the place, arranged everything so that, in pre-anticipation for clients, and nobody walked in. And you go to sleep and you wake up in the morning and you still come back to the same place and you repeat the routine. It only almost takes a mad person to do the same thing. You need to have a lot of resilience, a very big capacity for resilience and for consistency. So there are so many aspects of the owner that one can break down into, and that will take a separate video. The other component of the triad is identifying a need and the capacity of the people or the capacity of the population to pay for the need. We've just given the perfect example of a matatu making a U-turn once spotting that there is a group of people who need to be ferried to town. And now, identifying a need, it's one of the things that needs to drive the need to start a business. Because you will only get money when you solve somebody's or a people's problem at a price that they can afford. Now, a problem is a need that requires to be solved once those people are willing to pay for it. You might walk into a place and find that there is no chemist, there is no hospital, there is nowhere that these people are able to access health services within their vicinity. And that automatically is a need. One can just walk into a shopping center and realize that there is nowhere where you can spot a supermarket or a store where they can just walk in, pick items, go to the counter and pay. But then all the shops or all the establishments are just the basic shops that you are used to. So identifying a need, it's not hard. You just need to look at what these people move from their respective places to go and look for. It can just be a rainy day and you realize that your shoes are, messed up, they are dirty. You want to go to probably an interview or an important meeting. You need your shoes cleaned up and you are at the stage, waiting for a matatu and there is no shoe shine in sight. That is a business need. Okay, so you need to identify what the population really need and their capacity to pay. Their capacity to pay will determine the level of establishment that you need to put. And the third aspect of the triad, so that we close this video, is identifying the resources. Resources cost time and resources cost money, because time in itself is a resource. Then the other resources like equipment, like some other tangible things that you need. You need money to put into shelves, you need money to put into paintwork, you need a physical presence for your business, you need computers, you need operating systems. All those things are resources, and resources play a critical role towards determining the initial amount that is needed to start a business. Okay, so you need to identify all the resources that you will need to run the business, at least initially. Okay, so that after establishing and having looked at this triad that consists of the owner, the need that you need to satisfy, and the resources that you want. And resources here, we are talking also about money and where you need to get your money from. These three components will determine whether your business is going to be successful or not. Remember, it is not coming from the aspect of that I have 150,000 shillings and you go to your friend and you ask, what type of business can I put with this money? That is automatically the wrong approach towards a business. I have 200,000 shillings, or I have the ability to get 200,000 shillings through a loan. What kind of business can I put? It is not from that approach. It is from the approach of identifying a need, identifying the resources, and first of all, you as the owner or the owner who is putting up the business, do you have the necessary qualities that requires to go into a business? So that will be it for today. The next video, we will break down, we will fragment the owner of the business. We'll fragment into the qualities of a good businessman or a good businesswoman. We will go further and fragment into the things that can influence this owner into succeeding the business or not, the external things. and we talked about spouses and the other people who are close to the owner. So we'll fragment the owner, and when we look at these qualities of the owner, it will give us an idea as to whether you will be suitable to go into business, or you just better do other things in order to avoid losing your money and your time into a business.